Picture this. You are in the middle of the open ocean. There is water in every direction, and beneath your feet there is nothing but a few inches of oak standing between you and thousands of feet of black, freezing depth. Suddenly, a deafening crack rips through the air. An enemy cannonball has torn straight through the hull, below the waterline, out of sight, out of reach. Seawater is pouring in through the darkness. Men are screaming above deck. The floor beneath you is already tilting. In this moment, your captain cannot save you. Your fastest swordsman cannot save you. Every cutlass, every pistol, every ounce of pirate bravado on that deck is completely useless against the ocean pouring into the hold. The only thing standing between this crew and the bottom of the sea is one man, alone in the dark, flooding belly of the ship, working by feel as much as by sight, with nothing but an axe, a mallet, and a handful of shaped wooden plugs. That man is the Master Carpenter. We love to talk about pirate captains. We love their black flags, their cutlasses, their legendary cruelty, their gold. Movies give us Blackbeard's burning fuses and Jack Sparrow's swagger, but almost nobody talks about the man pirates feared losing more than almost anyone else on the ship. The man so valuable that entire pirate crews would kidnap him at gunpoint rather than let him walk free. The man whose single mistake meant everyone on board died together, and whose skill quietly decided whether a voyage became legend or became a grave at the bottom of the Atlantic. Today, we go below deck, into the dark, splinter-filled, waterlogged world of the pirate carpenter. By the end of this video, I promise you, you will never look at a pirate ship or a pirate crew the same way again. Before we go any further, if you love uncovering the brutal, hidden truths behind the Golden Age of Piracy, the stories the movies never show you, hit subscribe and turn on notifications right now, because this channel exists to drag those stories out of the dark. Here is something that surprises most people. On a pirate ship, the single most protected, most fought over, most desperately needed crew member was not the swordsman, it was not the gunner. In crew after crew, it was the carpenter. To understand why, you first have to understand what a pirate ship actually was. It was not steel, it was not indestructible. It was a fragile wooden shell, held together by rope fiber, hot tar, and thousands of tiny hand-cut joints. And it was under constant, silent attack from the ocean itself. Wood swells. Wood rots. Wood splits under the strain of wind and wave. And in warm tropical waters, timber gets eaten alive from the inside by a horrifying little creature called the shipworm. A soft-bodied clam that burrows into the hull and tunnels through solid oak, leaving planking that looks perfectly solid on the outside but is honeycombed and crumbling on the inside, capable of failing without warning in open water. Left unchecked, shipworms alone could sink a vessel within months, no cannon fire required. Add constant wear from storms, coral reefs, and the sheer violence of naval combat, and you start to understand a brutal truth. A pirate ship was dying, slowly, every single day of its life. The only thing standing between slowly dying and sinking tonight was the carpenter. He inspected the hull constantly, driving oakum fiber into the gaps between planks and sealing them with hot tar. He cut new timber to replace rotted sections. He repaired the pumps that kept rising bilge water from drowning the ship from within. He rebuilt masts shattered by wind or cannon fire, sometimes felling and shaping an entire tree on a hostile shore just to get the ship moving again. And when a captured vessel needed to be transformed into a proper pirate ship, it was the carpenter who tore out cabins, cut new gun ports into solid hull, and stripped away weight to make her faster and deadlier. This was never a skill a pirate could simply pick up on the job. It took years, often a full formal apprenticeship on land, to master timber and tools well enough to be trusted with dozens of lives at once, and that scarcity created something genuinely dark. Good carpenters were so hard to find, and so essential to survival, that pirate crews openly hunted for them the moment a new ship was taken. When a pirate vessel captured a merchant ship, one of the very first questions asked was not how much gold is aboard. It was, do you have a carpenter? And if the answer was yes, that man's future had just been decided for him, whether he wanted it or not. Let's talk about what happened to the men who said no. The most feared pirate in history, the one who built an entire legend out of terror alone, Blackbeard himself, is recorded to have seized the Master Carpenter the moment he captured the French slave ship La Concorde in November of 1717, the very vessel he would rebuild into his flagship, Queen Anne's Revenge. Blackbeard did not ask politely, and he did not take no for an answer. A skilled carpenter meant the difference between a fast, deadly warship and a leaking coffin, and a man like Blackbeard was never going to gamble his own life on an inferior craftsman just to respect someone else's freedom. But perhaps the most chilling case in the entire Golden Age belongs to the pirate captain Samuel Bellamy, one of the wealthiest pirates who ever lived, a man history now calls the Prince of Pirates. In December of 1716, Bellamy's men captured a merchant ship called the St. Michael, sailing out of Bristol, bound for Jamaica. Aboard was a young Welsh shipwright named Thomas Davis, only 22 years old and barely 5 years into life at sea. Davis begged to be released. He wanted absolutely no part of piracy, no part of the noose that came with it. But Bellamy needed a carpenter far more than he needed one man's consent, and Davis was forced aboard, told he would be freed the very moment they captured another vessel with a replacement carpenter on hand. That promise was never kept. Bellamy simply needed him too much to let him go. Davis was still trapped aboard Bellamy's flagship, the Whydah Gally, in April of 1717, when the pirate fleet made a fatal decision. A brutal nor'easter was building off the coast of Cape Cod, Massachusetts, and rather than seek safe harbor, the pirates pressed on through the night. The storm tore the Whydah apart in total darkness, her masts snapping, her hull rolling in surf so violent that survivors later said the ship simply came apart beneath them. Of roughly 146 men aboard, only 2 lived to see the sunrise. One was a ship's pilot. The other was Thomas Davis, the carpenter who never wanted to be there in the first place. Read that again. Out of an entire pirate crew, drowned and battered against the sand in the freezing surf, the ocean spared the carpenter. Some call it luck. Others say a man who had spent his life reading the way wood breaks, splits, and gives way under pressure understood, even in that chaos, exactly where the safest place to be was as the hull finally failed around him. When Davis was later captured, jailed, and put on trial for piracy in Boston, witnesses under oath confirmed he had begged repeatedly not to go, that he had been taken purely because of his trade. He was acquitted. The very skill that had stolen his freedom may be the exact same skill that ultimately saved his life, while nearly 150 other men went silent beneath the waves. Now let's talk about what happened when the cannons actually started firing. In naval combat, cannonballs did not simply punch clean holes through wood the way you might imagine. They shattered it. A direct hit could send a spray of jagged wooden splinters, some the length of a man's forearm, tearing across the deck at lethal speed, faster and far more dangerous at close range than the cannonball itself. Ship's surgeons of the era feared splinter wounds more than gunfire because a wooden shard driven deep into flesh was nearly impossible to fully remove and turned fatal through infection far more often than a clean wound ever did. But the real crisis was almost always happening below the waterline, completely out of sight of the men fighting on deck. Every hit near or under the waterline meant seawater pouring in, and in the chaos of battle, it was the carpenter's job to climb down into the dark, flooding lower decks, sometimes waist deep in freezing water, cannon fire thundering above his head, and find the breach before the ship lost stability entirely. He carried shot plugs, cone-shaped wooden wedges cut to jam tightly into a hole and swell watertight as they absorbed moisture, sealing the breach from the inside within minutes if he was fast, and within seconds if he was truly skilled. A delay of only a few minutes could mean the difference between a ship that finished the fight and a ship that never saw the surface again. Think for a moment about the psychology of that job. While every other pirate on deck was fighting an enemy he could see, screaming, swinging steel, firing pistols in daylight, the carpenter was alone, in darkness, fighting an enemy made of water and gravity that he could barely see at all, and he was fighting it for every single life on that ship, including men above him who would never even learn his name, let alone thank him for it. There is one more terrifying duty that almost never makes it into pirate films, and it is arguably the most dangerous of them all: careening. Every few months, a pirate ship had to be deliberately beached on its side in shallow water so the crew could scrape away the barnacles, weed, and shipworm damage that had built up on the hull below the waterline. Without this, a ship would slowly lose speed until it could no longer outrun the very Navy warships hunting it. But careening turned a warship into a helpless, toppled skeleton, cannons useless, half the crew ashore, completely exposed to attack from rival pirates, hostile natives, or naval patrols who knew exactly what a beached ship on its side meant: an easy kill. During this entire operation, the carpenter was the single most important man on the beach. It was his inspection that decided whether the ship was seaworthy enough to sail again. His hands that repaired the worst of the shipworm damage, and his judgment that told the captain how many more days of dangerous exposure the crew would have to endure before they could refloat and escape. Get it wrong, rush the job, miss a soft, rotted plank, and the ship could fail catastrophically at the worst possible moment, weeks or months later, far from any shore, with no beach left to save them. If you still doubt just how much a single carpenter's skill could mean, look at what happened when a ship had none. Crews without a trusted carpenter were forced to rely on rough repairs made by ordinary sailors, men with strong backs but no real training in how timber behaves under strain. A patch that looked solid to an untrained eye could hide a soft, rotten plank underneath. A joint that would hold in calm water but shatter the moment real pressure hit it in a storm or a broadside. Historians who study shipwrecks from this era consistently point to the same pattern. Vessels that limped along without skilled maintenance were far more likely to simply come apart at the worst possible moment, often with no warning at all, no dramatic final battle, just water rising in the dark until it was too late to stop. This is precisely why desperate pirate captains were willing to break their own rules, forcing free men into servitude, holding them against their will for months or years, rather than sail without one. It was never really about greed alone. It was about the plain, terrifying mathematics of survival at sea. A pirate crew without a skilled carpenter was not simply inconvenienced. It was living on borrowed time, and every single man aboard knew it, whether they admitted it out loud or not. Here is the part of this story that most pirate movies conveniently leave out completely. Skilled surgeons were rare on pirate ships. Real, trained doctors, understandably, did not volunteer for a life that ended. More often than not, at the gallows, and crews frequently had no choice but to improvise. So when a man's arm was shattered by grape shot, or a leg was crushed beyond saving in the chaos of a boarding action, who did the crew turn to? The same man who was already an expert with a saw, who already understood how to cut cleanly and confidently through dense material without hesitation. The carpenter. It sounds almost unbelievable today, but it is well documented across multiple accounts from the era. In the absence of a trained surgeon, the ship's carpenter was regularly called upon to perform amputations, using the very tools he used to shape masts and hulls. There was no anesthesia beyond a mouthful of rum, no sterilization beyond a red-hot blade or boiling tar poured onto the wound to seal it and stop the bleeding. The man who spent his morning repairing a splintered railing might spend his afternoon holding down a screaming crewmate while removing a limb at the joint, simply because he was the only person aboard with steady enough hands and the right tools to do it at all. Try to imagine carrying that weight day after day, knowing that the same hands, the same saw, the same trade might be used to build a mast 1 hour and to end a man's suffering or begin it the very next hour, with absolutely no formal medical training behind him at all. This was not fiction dreamed up for the screen. This was the grim, ordinary reality of life at sea during the Golden Age of Piracy. So, with all of this responsibility resting on one man's shoulders, what did the carpenter actually get in return? Pirate crews were famously democratic for their time, and their written contracts, known simply as the Articles, laid out exactly how plunder would be divided before a voyage even began. While an ordinary sailor might receive a single share of any prize taken, the carpenter typically received 1 1/4 shares, and on many ships as much as 1 1/2, placing him firmly above the average crewman and often on par with senior officers like the boatswain and the gunner. In some crews' articles, the carpenter was additionally guaranteed a fixed payment before plunder was ever divided at all, sometimes around 150 pieces of eight, simply as compensation for keeping the entire vessel seaworthy throughout the voyage. He was also granted something almost no ordinary pirate ever had: personal space. Many carpenters were given their own small cabin, combined with a workshop, a place to safely store precious tools that could never easily be replaced once a ship left port. And crucially, because his labor was considered irreplaceable, he was often kept out of the most dangerous boarding actions entirely. His life, put simply, was worth more to the crew intact than risked in a sword fight he had no particular skill for. We even have surviving proof of this in writing. the actual Articles of Agreement, signed by the crew of the pirate John Phillips in 1723, preserved because they were used as evidence in his crew's trial, specifically single out the carpenter by name alongside the master, boatswain, and gunner, granting him a full share and a quarter, well above the single share given to an ordinary hand. Other surviving articles from the era go even further, listing the carpenter's cut alongside the ship's clerk, gunner, and boatswain as one of the 2 full share positions, a rank of trust normally reserved for men who could be relied upon in a crisis, not simply men who could swing a cutlass. This was not folklore invented centuries later for a movie script. This was written down, sworn to, and nailed up outside the captain's cabin door for every man on board to see and respect. But this respect came bundled with brutal accountability. If a ship sank due to poor maintenance, if a leak went unnoticed for too long, if a mast failed at the worst possible moment mid-battle, the blame landed squarely on the carpenter, and pirate crews were not forgiving men. In a trade where the price of failure was death for the entire crew, there was simply no room for a bad carpenter. Either you were skilled enough to be trusted with dozens of lives at once, or you did not last long in that role at all, one way or another. So the next time you watch a pirate movie and you see the captain barking orders while cannons roar and cutlasses clash under a black flag, remember this. Somewhere below deck, in the dark, in the flooding belly of that ship, there was almost certainly a carpenter, alone, fighting a silent battle that nobody on deck ever applauded, a battle that quietly decided whether anyone survived to celebrate victory at all. The captains got the legends carved into history books. The carpenters simply kept the ships, and every soul aboard them, alive. Would you have had the stomach for that job? Alone in the dark, half drowned, driving a wooden plug into a hole while cannon fire thunders above your head, knowing that if your hands fail for even a moment, every single man on board dies with you? Or does the thought of picking up that same saw to amputate a crewmate's leg with nothing but rum and hot tar to help him through it send a cold chill down your spine? Tell me honestly in the comments below. Think about Thomas Davis one more time before you go. A 22-year-old shipwright who never wanted to be a pirate, dragged aboard by force, given no choice at all, and yet the one man the ocean let live when nearly 150 others went under. Not the captain, not the quartermaster, not a single man who carried a sword into battle that spring, the carpenter. There is something almost poetic and deeply unsettling about the fact that the man forced into piracy against his will may have survived precisely because of the skill piracy stole him for in the first place. That is the real legacy of the pirate carpenter. Not gold, not glory, not a flag or a nickname whispered in fear across the Caribbean. Just wood, water, and the quiet, thankless knowledge of exactly how much weight a ship and a man's hands could bear before everything gave way. And if this hidden, brutal, unbelievably human side of pirate history fascinated you as much as it fascinated me, make sure you are subscribed, because there are far darker stories from the Golden Age of Piracy still waiting below deck. Until next time, stay sharp and stay far away from the Cape of Storms.